What is going on, everybody? I'm gonna move up here because I have a tank top on. I just wanted to come on and just, as most of you know, the Roe v. Wade thing has been shut down so that it makes it that it goes to the states. And when I heard that, I could see two different things. I saw some people that call themselves pastors that are coming against the court for saying, making it to the states and some states making it illegal. And these pastors are saying, that women should have a right to choose. These are not pastors, okay? These are not, I should say, let me reword that. They're not pastors that are leading the flock. They are fake pastors leading fake Christians. And then you have the other side of the spectrum where people are celebrating and just completely overjoyed and excited. And I'm sitting back and I'm thinking, okay, a complete victory would be a complete and total against the law, no state. You can't go to any state and have it done. That would be a victory. So the celebrations that are going on in this overturning of Roe v. Wade, I think is misplaced, because abortion is still going to happen. People are still going to travel to abort their babies. Blood is still going to be shed, and innocent lives are still going to be lost. Now, unfortunately, I don't want to say unfortunately, that's a wrong word. You're going to have people that are demented that are going to seek other forms of abortion to do it. And I believe that, just because a state has, sorry, I heard something. Just because a state has shot it down doesn't mean that the woman isn't going to, one, either travel, or two, do it herself. So I apologize. Every time I get on here, I'm telling you, the military base, oh my goodness, the military base is playing games. But lives are still going to be lost. Abortion is still going to be had and still going to be found out. And, though it is a victory to a certain extent where you have states that are going to shut it down, it's not a complete victory. And, I find that with this overturning, that people are beginning to lose their grip. They're beginning to believe that things are going back to normal. I should say the religious folk are believing that things are going back to normal. They even believe that Trump is going to get back in office. They believe that Benjamin Netanyahu is going to get back in and everything's going to be hunky-dory and fine. And that this is the sign that things are going to go back to normal, that we're going to have a major revival and things are going to go, in our favor. And it's not at all. And here's what I believe all of this means. I could be wrong. Okay? This is just my idea. That this whole thing is a planned event to create a civil unrest and a civil war within the United States, to create enough chaos. See, an agenda has to have an agenda, okay? They have an agenda to meet another agenda. So they have to create this chaos through this in order to get what they want, right? It's like, we'll give you a little bit if we can get what we want. And what they want is to take your guns. So they're going to create this chaos because now you're going to have a civil war across the United States. And people are going to be using their guns. And that's a reason for them to take them. Because people should have a right to choose. People should have a right to protest, and people should have a right to speak their voice. And you don't have a right to use your gun. So I think it was kind of like a, I'll scratch your back if you scratch mine type of thing. Sorry. People want to, like, oh, they did the right thing or whatever. These people, you have to remember that these people, they are wicked people, okay? And, this is only going to create chaos. This Roe v. overturning, it's just going to create chaos. Like I said, it's a planned chaos. There's also another thing that kind of brought to my mind was that, again, this is a planned thing, that it takes your mind off of what's happening overseas. It takes your mind off of the threats that Russia has given, takes your mind off of Israel, takes your mind off of the election in Israel, takes your mind off of what Joe Biden is going to do here in a few weeks, and that is going to Israel, planning to divide Israel. It's all to create this soft illusion that America's, we're finally getting back to where we should be. And in the meantime, you have these demons that are going to be screaming to the top of their lungs because they cannot sacrifice their babies. And I don't hear any pastor talking about sin and talking about, how not to get pregnant and the cause of sin that led them to get pregnant in the first place. Yes, the small minority of people are sexually assaulted and they in turn result in a pregnancy. But what are the cases of a sexual assault that has resulted in a pregnancy where the woman has decided to keep her baby and that child has gone on to become an amazing human being? And a lot of times a human being that's for God, what Satan meant for evil, God meant for good. And a lot of these people that have decided to keep their baby out of a rape situation, these kids have grown up to become pastors or leaders or something, a leader in a church or an evangelist or something that they can use for the glory of God. And I don't hear any pastor talking about this. I don't hear any pastors, talking about sin and saying, the way to prevent a pregnancy is through abstinence. Where is this abstinence movement? I know when I was a teenager, the abstinence movement was huge, and the promise ring and the abstinence and waiting for your husband and waiting for the gift of marriage. And, you don't hear that anymore. And instead you hear pastors, wanting to coddle these women who have, deliberately done this over and over and over again, instead of talking to them about sin and how to stop getting pregnant. And a lot of people nowadays, because the days are wicked and evil, they always try to sugarcoat and try to find ways around the idea of why they need to have an abortion. Oh, there's too many kids in the adoption. I was told today, well, how many children have you adopted from because these people have, given up their children. And I'm thinking, okay, that's not even close to be an argument. And like I always tell people, and I always seem to, not that I'm out to win an argument, because it's not about winning an argument, but it gets people to think, and it gets their brain started, because they start to think, and then they're so, because you've now stirred up the demons that they have inside of them, that they try to come back with these bogus things that make zero sense whatsoever. But what I always tell people is that the heartbeat forms, and God did this on purpose, and he did this for a reason, because he knew, of course, he knows the future. He knows that this is what was going to happen, and this is the argument that is going to to be had. And the heartbeat forms after 14 days of conception. Most of the time, well, not even most of the time, in all, that's before you even realize that you're pregnant, okay? The heartbeat is the first thing that forms. You'll see like a little round thing and you'll see a flicker, okay? That's the first thing that forms, the very first thing, before hands, before a head, before eyeballs, before anything. It's the heart that's flickering. And I always tell people, where there's a heartbeat, there's life, right? And if you stop that heartbeat, you have ended a life. And, then they want to come back and they want to say, well, it's a zygote and it's this and it's that and it's not alive. Well, how is it not alive if it's got a heartbeat? Anything that has a heartbeat is a living thing, right? You don't see, microscopic cells. They don't have a heartbeat, right? The only thing that has a heartbeat is something that's alive. So if you end that heartbeat, you have ended a life. And you have now paid an executioner to end the life of your child. And it is no longer my body, my choice. It was your choice when you laid up and got yourself in that position. And it is that child's right to life. It is not your right to choose whether or not that child lives or dies. It is not your choice. Your choice is whatever you want to do with your body. But once you have a human with a heartbeat living inside of you, it is now not your body, it is their body. And there's a lot of people, that want to scream these women's rights and all of that. Well, what right does that, what if that child is a girl? What right do they have? They have no rights whatsoever. So these women's rights are nothing but bogus ideas as well. And I just, and people want to try to trivialize it and say, oh, well, it's not, there's certain circumstances. There's zero circumstance, zero whatsoever. If you are a believer in Jesus Christ, there is zero, and I mean zero, circumstance for an abortion. If the doctor tells you that you need to abort this fetus, otherwise you could die, how do you know that that doctor is telling you the truth? And I'm going to tell you a story. My brother, when my mom was pregnant for him, she had doctor after doctor after doctor after doctor telling her to abort my brother because he had Down syndrome, right? They kept telling her he has Down syndrome or he has some chromosome issues or he's got this or that and you need to abort him. And my mom, obviously, she would not do it. And she said, if that's what God has for us, then that is what we will deal with. If he's got Down syndrome, then we're going to still love him. He's going to be loved no matter what is the problem. And she had my brother and there was nothing. He does not have Down syndrome. He's the smartest. He's smarter. He is smart. Okay. He's very smart. He works with computers and he programs them and he looks at these computers and I look at it like German and he's just like, oh yeah, you do the da 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 da. And he programs these computers. That's his job. And you don't know. You cannot trust the words of the doctors when they tell you, oh, you need to abort this baby because it could end your life. How do you know that? How do you know this doctor's heart? You don't know this doctor's heart and whether or not he has a bloodthirsty heart, that he just wants to sacrifice your baby at your cost. So you need to think about that stuff. And, somebody who isn't truly saved, is not saved, they don't believe in Jesus Christ, I have a little bit more compassion for, because they are lost. They don't understand what they're doing. You have to still tell them what they're doing wrong. And you still have to talk about the sin and how they got in that place in the first place and how to stay out of it. You have to love them, all of that. But I have more compassion on people who are not saved than I do on a person who claims Christ and has one. Because you know better. And, it's It's murder, pure and simple. So, you know, this whole Roe v. thing is just a ploy. It's not something to completely throw a party for. I believe that there's an evil intent behind it. I believe that, you know, it's going to create a civil unrest and a civil war within the United States. That's what I believe is going to happen. I believe it was planned. There's no coincidence that the gas and the food and all of that stuff is disappearing, and then this happens, and then this riot thing that's going to happen, and that's going to happen all across the board. There's no coincidence in the timing of it all, and I believe that there's nothing really to be celebrated because lives are still going to be lost regardless. So, you know, I don't know what the joy of it all is when babies are still going to die. So that's just my opinion, guys. But anyways, I'm going to let you go. I will talk to you later. Have a good day and be blessed.